You might notice I'm wearing the shirt for the thing I'm talking about. Don't expect that every time. I just happen to have this. Now, I might be a little bit late to this party, but oh well. Okay, so here we are. I'm giving my thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now, as always, I like to give a spoiler warning if you haven't seen the movie. I'm definitely going to be discussing it in its entirety. I'm also giving a disclaimer because with a lot of my other videos, I talk about historical context and other things that are factual information. This is mostly just going to be my opinion, my thoughts, theories, pure conjecture on my part. So the first thing I really picked up on when I was watching Kingdom is that it was really interested in leaders, and specifically prophetic leaders. For instance, I don't think it was any coincidence that one of the main characters was named Noah, or that there was a big ship involved, or that a giant flood came and washed away all the evil apes. Now, if you're thinking, a biblical allegory? That ain't for me. Hold on. Just wait. It's Planet of the Apes. Not that there's anything wrong with biblical allegory if that's your thing. You're probably a big Chronicles of Narnia fan. But like I said, this is Planet of the Apes, and if we keep in mind the types of themes that this franchise likes to tackle, then there's probably something more going on here than direct religious allegory. I actually think we're presented with a lot of recognizable symbols and motifs that point to prophetic figures, but more so to get us thinking about these characters in that way. Because if you look at the individual elements themselves, they don't really line up. For instance, the ship doesn't save anybody from a flood. It's under the control of Proximus, not Noah. And the flood isn't sent by God or even natural causes. It's caused by explosives, set off by a human and some apes with a very specific agenda. So let's come back to this. When I say prophetic leaders, I don't mean in the sense that they can predict the future. I'm talking about an individual that becomes iconic. Someone that takes on a mythic, legendary, or even sacred kind of status. Kingdom was really interested in the phases of these types of leaders, specifically how they're created, how they're followed, and how they're remembered. Now, the movie begins with the funeral of Caesar, so we might as well start there too. Now, I can see how some people might have thought this was just a fun little callback to remind us what's already happened, who Caesar was, that kind of thing, but I think it served a much bigger purpose than that. The whole scene is filled with reverence and iconography, and you can see two elements of that here, starting with Caesar's symbol. And of course, where it comes from is the window pattern in the house that Caesar was raised in. I like to think that this symbol is important to Caesar for two reasons. One, it represents the warmth, comfort, and love of home. Two, it reminds him that he was essentially a prisoner, kept inside, always looking outward, until he liberated himself. And that goes along really well with Caesar's whole philosophy. He always tried to lead with a sense of both respect and love, but also fiercely fighting for his and every other ape's liberation. On top of that, I think this symbol is a great representation of the bigger themes of Planet of the Apes altogether, which if you've seen my other videos, you know that Planet of the Apes is cyclical. We're getting different elements of different stories from different times, but that all contribute to the greater cycle. So back to the scene, it's very solemn. Caesar's body is being burned on a pyre. It's almost like a sacred altar. His symbol is etched in stone above his head, and the apes all get together and make this unified gesture. And of course, that gesture means apes together strong. This goes back to the first movie in the reboot series, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when Caesar is teaching his buddy Maurice how he plans to free all the apes. He breaks a twig and he puts all the pieces together, and when they're all together, he can't break it. So he's doing this, and he says, apes together strong. So we can see what an incredible legacy Caesar left here. Very nearly a religion. He sacrificed himself for ape kind. He left them with symbols, teachings. You can see what I'm suggesting here. He was essentially a messiah figure, a prophet, a mythic sort of leader. So then we fast forward about 300 years, and now we can see how Caesar's legacy has impacted future generations. And we do that by looking through the lens of three different characters. First, we see that leaders are forgotten. The society that Noah comes from has no idea about Caesar. They don't know who he is or what his teachings were, even if they're now reaping the benefit of those teachings. Through Rocca, we see that leaders are worshipped. Now, in Rocca's defense, he's not praying to Caesar or anything, but he very much is a disciple, a follower, constantly preaching to Noah and anyone that will hear about the teachings of Caesar and how good they are. He also continues to carry the symbol of Caesar around his neck, and he's even wearing this scarf thing that looks a lot like the stole that priests wear. And then, of course, through Proximus, we see that leaders are corrupted. Proximus is a Latin word that essentially means next or nearest. So Proximus Caesar is claiming to be Caesar's successor. He's using Caesar's name, his symbols, and his words.
What a wonderful day! What a wonderful day! Are we thankful for the words of Caesar?
We are thankful.
Do we bend our heads?
We bend.
Say his words. Say his words! What a wonderful day!
But it's pretty easy to see that what Proximus is doing is not what Caesar would have wanted. Proximus has declared himself king, whereas Caesar would have ruled in a more equitable and benevolent way, but he's using the icons of Caesar to gain power. Proximus is essentially weaponizing the religion that Rocca practices. Even though Proximus doesn't adhere to the religion himself, he uses its iconography and motifs to gain control over a populace that recognizes those same symbols and themes. So remember what we said at the beginning, this movie is interested in the phases of prophetic leaders. Caesar is in the phase of being remembered. Proximus is now a current leader in the phase of being followed. And then we have Noah, who at the beginning of the movie isn't a leader at all, but by the end is the new leader of his tribe. Now, I can understand how maybe watching the movie doesn't quite feel like Noah reaches the iconic or mythic status that Caesar is at, or even Proximus, but you can see it's a legend in the making, the way he dramatically rescues his people from an evil monarch using the cultural icons of his people. Now, another great way to compare these leaders is the way that they treat the other. Now, the other is a term that here I'm using to refer to any person or group of people that represents a significant difference to the leader that we're talking about. That difference could be one of race, culture, religion, or in this case, species, because Kingdom uses May, the human, to represent the other. So throughout Kingdom, we get glimpses of the different ways these leaders would interact with the other. Rocca, of course, represents Caesar's teachings here, and he's constantly encouraging Noah to treat May with respect and kindness. Then we have Proximus, who does essentially the opposite. At best, he's using humans for his own gain, and at worst, he does not trust them at all. In fact, his entire goal is to ensure that this remains a planet of the apes, and that humans are not able to rise again. And then we have Noah, our new leader in the making, who is somewhere in the middle ground. First, he receives the teachings of Rocca and decides to trust May. Then later on, he receives the teachings of Proximus and wonders if he can trust him. So from there, Noah has to decide what kind of leader he's going to be. And at first, it seems like an easy choice: respect, kindness, or cruelty and distrust. But the movie isn't about to let that choice be so simple, since Proximus was kind of right about humans, at least specifically May, because we find out later that her choices were totally motivated by selfishness, fear, and a desire to make humans the dominant species again. And she'll stop at nothing to achieve her goals, even killing her own kind, let alone apes. So we're of course left to wonder what kind of prophetic figure was right, if any of them. Which one had a better influence on the world? How did those influences mix and mingle, and what did they result in? We have a really interesting scene at the end where May reunites with Noah one last time, and it's revealed that she's holding a weapon behind her back. They're kind of alone, so if she wanted to take Noah out to remove yet another threat against her species, she could, but she chooses not to. And the movie kind of leaves that open-ended. Was that because of Noah's kindness? Is it because she thinks there's something to gain there? Has Noah started to create a legacy of respect and kindness between apes and humans? Or are cycles going to repeat themselves, and are they set on yet another path of war and destruction? Who's to say? Anyway, those are my thoughts on Kingdom. That's all I have for today. I'm definitely planning on making more presentations, so please let me know what other movies you'd like to hear about. But thanks for being here.